Hey guys, it's Nicole. So what had happened was the camera that I typically use to shoot videos is not working. So please forgive me. I shot this week's video on my iPod, but I still hope you enjoy it. I promise I'll make y'all proud. So this week was just about the Hamilton non-troversy. Comment below about what you think. If you really do feel strongly that Hamilton is discriminating against you, please let's unpack that. I'd really do like to understand and be open about feelings and not hostile towards her. I won't be hostile towards you. But yeah, I just really want to unpack that and understand that better. But I pretty much think that they're on the right track. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoy the video. I am on my way to Atlanta. I'm out of here. I'll see you guys later. I'll see you guys. Everything isn't about you, and it's totally okay. You guys were really true about opening up opportunity for everyone. I feel like the controversy would have existed for as long as Hollywood has been around. But hey guys, so today is episode 96,001 of people being able to spot reverse racism everywhere, but seemingly can't see racism anywhere. So this week, a lot of controversy has come up around Hamilton, a show that has been widely celebrated and embraced for its racially inclusive cast, and now people are calling it racist because the show creators have been very clear about trying to maintain and sustain that as they expand the musical to different cities and tour dates. So what happened? The Hamilton creators put up an advertisement on a casting site that asked for non-white actors that preferred non-white actors to fill the roles of the racially inclusive cast that has been widely celebrated on Broadway. You can't get a ticket. It's sold out, I believe, until fall or winter of this year. As I expected, people have a really big problem with the show creators wanting to maintain that standard of racial inclusivity, that which you don't really see in other shows. So you have an Asian American lead, you have an African American lead, you have the show writer is the son of a Puerto Rican immigrant. It's a really racially inclusive show, and it's part of the reason why it's been so celebrated. So first, I took the liberty of going to the website the same booking website that people are angry about where the casting call is. It wasn't hard to find a role, another show that was casting in the area that was casting only for white males for a lead role. Number one, the reason I know some of this controversy is false and made up is because casting agents have age and racial distinctions for roles since forever. And if this was really a true concern, we would have had more talk and more pushback on other theater companies and movies that had these same racial restrictions in terms of who they're casting for roles. So if we're really gonna have this discussion, let's have it out, and we're gonna expand it to the roles that are restricted only for white people, for Asian people. But if you're telling a story about an Asian American family, I don't think it's a bad thing to say that you prefer to cast Asian people. But okay, so the controversy seems to be a little false. It seems to be a little dishonest from the get-go. Here's another point that I think we need to make before we move on. People of color or people who are not represented or their stories aren't told fighting for equality in any capacity. It's not even restricted to theater. People of color or who sing men. So I think there's a false equivalency there. People of color who have carved out a place for themselves to tell their stories and to express themselves is not taking anything away from white actors who typically are the default for these lead roles. So that's something you need to understand from the get-go. Fighting for equality or making space for people who don't have the same opportunities as others others is not discrimination, it's not reverse racism, and it is not the oppression of white people. So I think that is something we need to clear up right now. Secondly, let's think about why the show even exists. So Lin-Manuel Miranda, and you can look at his Charlie Rose interview, you can look at his Katie Couric interview. He says when he was growing up, when he was a kid, in the theater productions in middle school and high school, he didn't really see a place for himself in the Great White Way, in Broadway. He couldn't be Don Quixote, and he wasn't really good enough dancer to be a knife wielding jet. Also, that is a story that has been told. In terms of news stories that were being told about the Latin American experience, those weren't being told. So what he did is he carved out a space, and hints in the Heights, he carved out a space to invite us into his world. As an African American, I don't know what it's like to grow up in Washington Heights. It was really great to see his perspective of the people that he saw in the streets and his portrayal of that. That improves Broadway. In the Heights did not take anything away from anybody. It actually added to the environment and freshened the narrative around people of color, and Broadway is better as a result. To me, I think that's a part of the reason why In Your Feet is able to be around. I know it's a little bit, it seems a little, a large claim, but I feel like it paved the way to other musicals like In the Heights to tell stories of Latin American, tell the stories and narratives of Latin Americans on Broadway where they wouldn't usually be told. The main problem I think we're facing here is people are misunderstanding them wanting to maintain the very racial inclusion that has made it such a blockbuster, such a hit. People are taking the creators wanting to maintain that and expanding that as the show goes forth as gypping white actors and actresses out of it. So let's look at examples from, I'm gonna draw parallels between Hollywood and Broadway because they are so similar. You have seasons that are really racially diverse and really racially inclusive in terms of shows, and then you have years where there's a dry spell. You don't have any people of color nominations. Check Oscars so white. You've had 2 years in a row where not a single person of color has been nominated for a lead acting role. The Tonys are not a stranger to that either. It happens all the time because having racial inclusion and even diversity in how we portray women's stories, how we portray transgender women's stories, how we include transgender men's stories is not a staple in Broadway. The default is white, straight narratives. That's just what it is. And we don't really get to see the richness of who people of color are. I know I'm being super general and I'll use more specific examples, but this is what we're dealing with. Now that Hamilton is successful, I fear that people want to center whiteness in that play and be able to center it more, and they're reacting badly to not being centered. So I feel like the solution to that is have the same perspective. Can you go to a wedding and not wear white? Can you go to somebody else's birthday party and not blow out their candles? The same concept goes with being able to build up and celebrate narratives by people who are not like you or don't look like you, aren't the same racial background, aren't your same sex, aren't your same anything. Be able to go to those stories, build those stories up, and be appreciative of them without yourself having to be centered in that narrative. It's just a part of life. Everything isn't about you, and it's totally okay. Okay, so I just wanted to go through some of the auditions. So everyone's mad about the audition material. And like I said before, it wasn't hard to go on that very same website and find racial distinctions and qualifiers for several lead acting roles. If you want to go on there, I invite you to do it yourself. It's not hard to do. In fact, the website has a filter for Asian roles, for African American roles, for white roles. You can filter roles and their availability by the state, city, or by race. So if we're really gonna have this conversation, and if you guys are really true about being opening up opportunity for everyone, I feel like the controversy would have existed for as long as Hollywood has been around. But it only comes up when Hamilton, a show celebrated for its racial inclusion, tries to maintain that. But I'm just gonna read a couple auditions. So I'm gonna read one from Hollywood actually. And this is what happens, like even when people are looking for African Americans and even when people are looking for Asian American roles, it's for us to be a caricature of our true selves. So actually BuzzFeed posted a story which I'm going to link, and they were looking for a lead Asian male for a role, or they were looking for an Asian male for a certain role. And the qualifications literally in it said that he had to have small private parts. That was a qualification for the role. This is real, totally real. Then you have Straight Outta Compton, and they had A, B, C, D, E girls or whatever. And the A girls were really pretty, light-skinned, without weaves. And it started to descend into, okay, B girls are poor and they're dark-skinned and they're uneducated. Like those are the types of roles that are available when they even are looking for African Americans, when they really are looking for Asian Americans. They're looking for a caricature of who we actually are. They're not really interested in most times they're not really interested in our actual stories. And for the Hunger Games, for example, there was a controversy around Katniss Everdeen's casting because she was written as a girl with straight black hair and olive skin and gray eyes. And when Hollywood casted for that role, they wanted underfed white teens. That was in their casting call. And I didn't see these same people who are upset about Hamilton being as upset as they were about that. And even Slate magazine quoted, like they were very upset. They were upset that Hollywood didn't take the opportunity of a racially inclusive character being cast in the Hollywood play. So those are the types of examples, and I'm using examples in Hollywood, but usually Broadway and Hollywood run parallel in their problems with racial inclusion. So if you look at the plays that are on Broadway, this is an actually really inclusive year, and Lin-Manuel isn't the only person. I think one of the actors on The Walking Dead also has a show called Eclipse that also features Lupita Nyong'o, and she even said, like, I don't think that I knew that if no one told this story, if I didn't tell the story, nobody else would, so I had to write it myself. And that is just people of color carving out a place for themselves where they wouldn't otherwise have had a space. I don't think it's anybody else's job to tell the story of what it's like to grow up in Washington Heights from Lin-Manuel's Latin American perspective. That's his job to do it. I don't think it's any other person's job to tell other narratives. In fact, like when you leave that up to other people, you get things like The Help, and you would think that if only for like giving people in the South who write letters to the editor, racism would have been solved. So it's really mishandled, and so I think it is our responsibility as people of color to represent ourselves and tell our own stories. But that most certainly isn't racial oppression. You know, a lot of people made fun of the people in the Oscars who boycotted the Oscars for not being racially inclusive and for saying 2 years in a row that there weren't any qualified actors of color to acknowledge in any serious way for lead acting roles. But I actually encourage you, and I'm sorry, Miranda, I'm really sorry to all the people around the show, but I think if you really feel so strongly that Hamilton is racially oppressing you or subjecting you to reverse racism. By the way, 80% of the people who consume tickets on Broadway or who attend Broadway plays are white. But if you do feel that Hamilton is racial oppression, I encourage you to boycott it, because there's a lot of little girls and boys who are dying to see themselves reflected in the characters in Hamilton. So I invite you to give up your seat so those kids who never see themselves in positive roles, who seldom see themselves in positive roles, can have a shot at seeing something so beautiful. All right, thanks. One more thing. If you guys like it, subscribe.